In the year 2063, as Earth faces an inevitable decline, scientists discover a new planet capable of sustaining human life. On screen, a woman explains the planet's potential for human colonization, urging the need for a scouting mission. Due to the 86-year journey, the crew aboard the ship will reproduce during the voyage, with the third generation being the ones to finally reach the planet. This crew is genetically engineered on Earth, using the genes of top scientists to create children specifically raised and trained for this mission. A man named Richard justifies this approach, highlighting the necessity of engineering a crew perfectly suited for the challenges of space travel. Richard, however, is concerned about whether the young crew will be fully prepared to handle the complexities of the mission. As he visits the facility where the children are raised, he interacts with them, monitoring their progress and offering comfort. Later, Richard suggests that he should join the mission to guide and protect the crew, speeding up the mission's launch timeline from 7 to 4 years. The mission finally begins, and Richard, along with the now-grown crew, boards the ship Humanitas, leaving Earth behind. 10 years later, the once children have grown into adults, beginning their daily routines aboard the vessel, as the journey to the new planet continues. The crew's daily routine aboard the ship is mechanical, as they go about their lives, including drinking a blue liquid and following strict protocols. Christopher and Zach pass the time listening to classical music, while Sella gazes out at the surrounding space. She later expresses to Richard her belief that the crew's lives are meaningless, prompting him to show her pictures of his grandparents and emphasize the importance of ensuring the future. Christopher, troubled by a restless night, becomes suspicious when he notices a warning about toxicity in the water system. But Richard dismisses his concerns. Curious, Christopher and Zach investigate further and discover that the blue liquid they consume contains a chemical that suppresses their desires and emotions, effectively pacifying them to prevent natural reproduction. Realizing they've been drugged to control the ship's population, they stop drinking the liquid and confide in 2 other crew members, Kai and Julie, about the hidden compartment on the ship. Tension rises when Christopher confronts Richard during a session, accusing him of lying, specifically about an unmarked compartment called Pod 23. Richard acknowledges that the mission leaders must have concealed the truth for a reason, suggesting the compartment may be meant for the 3rd generation. Richard then sends a message to Earth, requesting permission to be honest with the crew, but the response will take time to arrive. Meanwhile, Christopher begins having fantasies about Sella, leading to a confrontation between Zach and Sella in the cafeteria, which escalates when Richard intervenes. Later in the gym, Christopher and Zach's physical sparring becomes intense, leaving the other crew members confused as to what's happening. As Zach and Christopher begin to feel the effects of not taking the blue drug, their senses heighten, and they hear new sounds coming from the ship. They visit the observation room where a fellow crew member speculates that the noises might be from an alien life form. Meanwhile, in Richard's office, he shows Sella dried plants from Earth. Overhearing their conversation, Zach sees Richard touch Sella's shoulder and becomes jealous. Shortly after, the crew loses contact with Earth, and Richard decides to fix the transmitter, taking Zach with him. As preparations are underway, Zach approaches Sella and inappropriately touches her. Richard intervenes, pulling Zach away and confronting him, but Zach flees. While searching for him, Richard learns from Phoebe that Zach and Christopher have both stopped taking the blue drug, explaining Zach's erratic behavior. Richard argues with Christopher, explaining that the drug was designed to prevent this type of misconduct. He asks Christopher to help fix the transmitter and promises to support him when they raise concerns with mission control. As the crew prepares for a spacewalk, Zach sneaks into the systems room while Richard and Christopher go outside the ship to make repairs. Christopher, experiencing unfamiliar sensations, is monitored by Richard, who fixes part of the transmitter before something on the ship's screen suddenly appears next to them. The mysterious entity injures Richard, sending him hurling into space, while the ship malfunctions, leading to a fire in the systems room. Christopher pulls Richard back inside, but despite efforts from the medical team, led by Sella, they are unable to resuscitate him. Sella, as chief medical officer, pronounces Richard dead, while the ship faces cascading system errors. The crew holds a meeting to discuss the recent events, including the mysterious creaking sound, and a crew member's claim that they saw something alien-like jump into Richard before his death. Phoebe breaks down, but Christopher reassures everyone that if they stay composed, they'll be fine. As the ship's systems reboot, they attempt to review surveillance footage, but discover that the fire in the systems room erased it all. With Richard gone, they must choose a new chief officer. Zach suggests himself, but the crew holds an election, ultimately selecting Christopher. Though Zach is jealous, he congratulates Christopher. Christopher's first task is organizing repairs across the ship, prioritizing the transmitter and other fire damage, with the surveillance system last on the list, hoping the drives with Richard's final moments are still intact. Selah visits Richard's office and looks through his personal belongings, including pictures and videos. When Christopher joins her, she explains that she is supposed to destroy Richard's archive, but feels conflicted. She shows him the photos, and they talk about the significance of family, with Christopher wondering if Richard confided in her because they were closer than just colleagues. Selah clarifies that Richard was simply lonely. Together, they watch Richard's video diaries, where he expresses his deep belief in the mission and care for the crew. Meanwhile, the crew gathers in the cantina, not at their posts. As Zach explains, they're repairing the refrigerators to prevent food spoilage. Zach suggests they celebrate Christopher's promotion with a feast. Afterward, Kai tells everyone to stop drinking the blue liquid, and they all dump it. Selah and Christopher continue watching Richard's videos, growing closer, while Zach and Julie's mutual attraction surfaces. The crew begins to relax, playfully fighting and running around the ship, enjoying moments of levity as they explore Richard's personal archive. Selah finds the crew in Richard's quarters and orders them to leave, though they resist. Zach is the last to go, ominously telling Selah that Richard is no longer there to protect her. Concerned about Zach's intentions, Christopher follows him, worried he might harm Selah. When he learns she's in the med bay, he rushes there first and pretends that he and Selah are intimate when Zach arrives, causing Zach to leave. Selah, confused and defensive, threatens Christopher with a scalpel, unsure of his motives. Christopher assures her that he wants to help, but she insists that he focus on controlling the rest of the crew, who are becoming unruly. Christopher confronts Zach, warning him to stay away from Selah, when they both hear the strange crackling noise again, which echoes throughout the ship. Tensions rise as Kai flies into a rage, attacking a crewman who got close to Julie, leading to a brawl. Christopher tries to restore order in the cantina, but the crew resists his authority. When the crewman Kai attacked retaliates by hitting him with a tool, Christopher intervenes, stopping the fight and ordering both men to be treated. In a subsequent meeting, Christopher urges the crew to stop fighting and resume repairs, reminding them that their grandchildren will need their support to complete the mission. Zach challenges Christopher's leadership, rallying some of the crew to form a faction that rejects the rules, claiming they need to prepare to fight an alien presence on the ship. A division forms, with some crew siding with Zach, while others remain loyal to Christopher. As Christopher leads his group to repair the surveillance system, Zach and his followers search the systems room for the alien. Inside, Zach and Kai are terrified by an unseen presence, and they flee, sealing the room and later claiming they were attacked by the alien. Christopher brings the surveillance drive to Selah in the medbay, and together with a few others, they review the footage. To their shock, they discover that Zach and Kai killed Richard by electrocuting him and fabricated the story about an alien. Unsure of how to handle the situation, they decide to keep the discovery a secret for the time being. Christopher and Selah hide the drive in her room, where they discuss the situation. Christopher worries that without the drug, this violent behavior might be their true nature, but Selah disagrees, insisting they are different. Despite his concerns, Christopher shares his fears that the others may not care about the truth, and Selah comforts him. They end up kissing and spending the night together. The next morning, Zach bangs on Selah's door, insisting he'll come in one way or another. When she and Christopher open it, Zach and Kai invite them to a celebration in the cantina. Christopher's group joins the others, already eating, and Zach takes the opportunity to declare himself the new chief officer. In response, Christopher walks to a monitor and plays the surveillance footage, revealing to everyone that Zach killed Richard and there is no alien. He suggests that Zach should confine himself while they consult the program and decide his fate. The crew becomes upset, and Zach admits to the killing but defends his actions, claiming he did it to protect them because the alien was inside Richard and now hides within the ship, possibly in one of them. Zach convinces the crew they need to hunt and kill the supposed alien, turning them against each other. The group suspects a crewman from the med bay and, led by Kai, brutally beats him to death. Christopher takes his group to a secure location, while Zach's group arms themselves from the medbay. Some members of Christopher's group feel hopeless and consider joining Zach to bide time. Sella realizes that Christopher knows about hidden weapons on the ship, and he goes to find them. He locates the secret compartment, but before he can retrieve the weapons, Zach's group gets there first. Armed and divided, the crew becomes more hostile. Sella, Christopher, and Phoebe devise a plan to confront Zach. But as tensions escalate, Kai kills Phoebe, shocking everyone. Christopher and Sella manage to escape from Zach's group, but they are pursued throughout the ship. Hiding in a vent, they are eventually discovered, leading to a series of close encounters, including a fatal confrontation with Kai. Zach relentlessly hunts them down until they end up in an airlock. In a final struggle, Zach is sucked into space after stabbing Sella. Christopher also gets pulled out but manages to grab the ship and return. With Zach gone, the crew disarms, and peace is restored. Time passes, and Sella becomes the new chief officer after a vote. She declares that decisions will now be made collectively, and the crew continues their mission without returning to the blue drug. Years later, Sella gives birth to Christopher's child, marking the next generation aboard the ship. As the mission reaches its 86th year, the Humanitas prepares to land on a new planet, with both older and younger generations looking forward to their new home.